Welcome back to another Chunks episode. Sit down and talk day today. I think I'm liking this style. It's a bit more scripted, but I feel like I want to start providing value and a bit of my opinion on sort of things. Haha, love it. I hope you've all been well. Hope you enjoyed the last episode with Grace. I thought it was such a great chat, just a cheeky plug there. Amazing. Let's get into this Chunks episode. I know you're clicking on the video or the podcast title just because you want to listen to what the topic is. But just for some context, just got back from a trip in Sydney to visit Issika, which was so cute and lovely. And it was just before uni started. And I felt that for the first time this year, like I could just, take a pause and sort of enjoy life a bit. Obviously, we're still editing podcasts for all of you, so please tune into them. But yeah, it was just nice to sort of just put the feet up a little bit and explore a different place for 6 days. Let's just say Melbourne is a lot better, but I feel like that is an entirely different conversation for a future episode. It feels good to know that nothing has changed between Issika and I, though. I think I don't think anything changed. Like, I still make her breakfast and coffee. Maybe the only change is I didn't get to drive her around as much, but, we'll see what she thinks of that. And I'm sure, you're all on this episode, and I'm a bit rusty, far out. I feel weird talking to a camera, but we'll get back into it. We're going to talk about long-distance relationships, which I'll call LDRs, or I'll probably call long-distance relationships. I don't know. I just wrote in my script that that's what I'll call them, as you may have guessed by the title of the video. I know Issika and my long-distance relationship, or LDR, hasn't been going on for a very long time, but I did want to talk about anyway because I thought it was quite an interesting chat. And just for some context and a bit of preface, to this day, I still remember clearly sitting in my car with Issika, and she did bring up the topic around a long-distance relationship. The med applications are super competitive in Melbourne, and she felt that she wasn't on the right trajectory to achieve that. Totally fine. She's still on the path to becoming a doctor, which is very commendable, and I have the utmost respect for her and anyone going through that process. Good on you. Far out. At the time, it did sort of shock me a little bit, of course. You don't really consider these things. And of course, you want to be with your partner and spend as much time as possible with them, regardless of whether they're going away or not. Like sometimes a 6-week holiday is like the worst thing in the world. But this is like a long distance relationship. We were going really strong and well beyond the honeymoon phase that we are all very familiar with if you've had a partner. We weren't the most codependent relationship, but I could be extremely biased as well. So any friends out there who are shaking their heads right now, I'm so sorry. But I did sort of start to wonder what a life would be like between the two of us. A lot of growing and many conversations later, and we've gone and done the darn thing. We've gone and done the long distance relationship. It's only been a month, so very early on, but I feel that we're coping really well. Just no one really asked Jaden, but you got to be validated by what people think of you and your relationship, I guess, in these days. Super interesting conversation. I think just for context on myself as well, I've been a very dependent person in relationships and have really enjoyed the physical touch aspect of it, of course, yada, yada, yada. It isn't awkward to talk about those things. Of course, those things happen in a relationship, a bit of kissing, bit of hugging, a bit of snoozing and cuddling next to each other. Those sorts of things do happen in a relationship, and I do sometimes put them at the top of my list, and I think a lot of people do as well. That is probably one of the biggest contributing factors to why you end up being in a relationship with someone, because you feel this physical connection with one another. So that was something that was bugging me a little bit, but I guess these are sort of 5 tips or things that I can take away from a long distance relationship so far. And they're obviously subject to change. We're still very early days, and I feel that there's so much growth potential in the relationship. Let's get into it. So I wanted to, make this podcast or video, if you're watching, thank you, to highlight my tips and takeaways from being in a long distance relationship as of recording today. My first tip was don't overthink it. In a world where everyone wants to have their say in things, ironic, I'm doing a podcast, it is so hard to declutter background noise. So difficult. It is so hard to navigate these things, and obviously with social groups and friends who might want to have a say in your sort of situation, it can be so hard to navigate and find a clear picture in your head, because you've just got so many people talking into your ear and talking down at you pretty much. So I guess from my end, when the conversations were starting, like, oh, so like, what's happening next year? Issa's graduating. What's she doing? Oh, she's doing med in Sydney. And they're like, oh, so are you going to do a long distance relationship? Those sorts of things. These are the three main types of reactions from people that I had sort of had discussions about. So the first one was I told them about the LDR, and they moved on and asked how I felt about it. Love that. Massive tick. I thought that was such a great way of dealing with it, and I appreciate anyone that did do that, because it just shifts the focus away from, oh my God, like, I could never do that. Like, what's happening? And then projecting feelings. And it's more like, let's shift the focus to how this person's feeling and see how we can go. And honestly, this is a long distance relationship video, but I think these skills are applicable to any sort of situation. As a human being, like, we have so many conversations and so many relationships and so many interactions with everyone. And I just think it's so important to know and feel comfortable and confident in how to navigate conversations sometimes. So that was the first person. The second one was the one that acknowledged that long distance relationships are super common and that it demonstrates a growth opportunity for the both of us. And I remember, I think this was at work. I forgot who it was. But I stood at the end of the fitting table and I was like, wow, that just validated, and not that you need external validation, which I'll get into, but it was just so reassuring to hear that people had come across it, because I think we're so young and we're so vulnerable to the fact that, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to kiss my partner. I'm not going to be able to hold her hand in public or their hand in public. And those things do weigh on you, and you might laugh, like totally understandable, but it's a thing in relationships. Like, you enjoy the physical aspect of it. And it's just so nice to hear that this person sort of brought a different light to it, because I think in long distance relationships, you think that you're the only people going through it. And you're the only people that are going to experience this phenomenon. No, there are so many people doing long distance relationships, whether that's work ends or like family. Like, you think of, I don't know, maybe a parent who's like traveling the world to go work. Like, that is a long distance relationship in a sense. So absolutely love this one. I should mute my computer. And then the third one was the one that really questioned how it would work, the viability, and sort of projected their insecurities into our relationship, which I did want to discuss. I guess my message and my takeaway from this is that people really show their true colors when there's tea or gossip surrounding a situation that isn't necessarily theirs. And I guess it, understandably, like, it makes it so much easier for someone to have an opinion on things that isn't happening to them. And too many people live vicariously through others and sort of feed off the situations that they might consider difficult, or that person who has been vulnerable and has expressed their concerns might consider difficult. That wasn't a sentence, but the fact that this person, or say myself, has come out and been vulnerable and been like, hey, like, this is actually happening. I find it a little bit difficult. And then all of a sudden you're barraged with, oh my God, like, is it going to work? Like, oh my God, like, I could never do that. And it's that projection that really, it's cringe. Like, grow up, please. And it's so hard to navigate, and I understand, because everyone's very opinionated. I'm very opinionated. I have a podcast. I'm talking about things. But just grow up and understand that you should be empathetic of others. And to stop feeding into this toxic gossip and I can never do that, yada, yada, yada. But with that being said, I was really grateful for those that were close to me, because I think the way that they handled it was just beautiful. And I love you all, if you're listening. There were some instances where people would tell us to break up, which was like, I don't know. I don't even think like how. Oh, I don't know. I don't know if these people can even identify how insensitive that this can come across. And no, it wasn't. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't as if I needed every single person to validate our relationship or us doing long distance relationships. Like, it's hard. Some people do break up, or some things don't work. But it's like, why do you feel the need to project your insecurities onto someone? And I guess I won't discuss much further, but it sort of opened up, in my eyes, why does everyone need to have a say on things? You know, I don't know. That was my sort of main takeaway. And again, literally the most ironic point ever, as I run a podcast and provide my own insight into things. But I think it's something that I'm so mindful of today, because I guess I know I present this narrative of high school, uni, and getting a job as like hell, and that you shouldn't delve into it. But again, I'm doing it and I don't enjoy it. And that doesn't mean that thousands of other people out there don't enjoy it as well. Maybe there are, maybe there aren't. And some people are actually thriving and like doing and living their best life. And honestly, good on them. It's so nice to see that. And it's great to see that something's working for you. But I'm so mindful of projection, and it is so hard to navigate because everyone wants to have an opinion on things. Which is probably why I don't blame most of the people reacting the way that they did. And don't get me wrong, there were so many people, again, that were supportive, or not even fazed by the idea of a long distance relationship. I think when you're in it, you start to catastrophize a lot and think of the worst case situations. But I'm really grateful for this, and the way that people handled it from my groups really gave me confidence leading into it. But I also don't think it necessarily hurts to have some sort of validation sometimes. But if you're solely reliant on other people's outlook on your life decisions, then I seriously implore you to either, one, look elsewhere for friends, or surround yourself with people that aren't necessarily that vibe. Or two, reevaluate your own habitual routines and identify, like, where are you lacking this validation? Is it from your parents? Is it from your friends? Is it from you not achieving what you want to do? You know, find the source and please work on it. It is seriously not worthwhile people pleasing everyone or letting the opinions of others dictate the way that you function as an individual. Like, imagine living like that. We probably actually don't have to be honest. We are like so painstakingly invested in what our closest groups have to say, or what work friends have to say, or friends have to say, or families have to say, you know, and we stop to reevaluate on what is actually rewarding in our life, and what do we enjoy in life. And I think it alleviates so much added stress from societal expectations. So do what makes you happy is the tip. And the first tip is to not overthink the long distance relationship. Like, there can be so many extraneous variables, like I discussed. And you know in yourself, like, whether you love someone. I think there's always the gut feel, and you should always trust your gut. And it's honestly one other opinion against yours, and you know yourself better. Like, sure, it's great to have people backing you, but yeah, do you need people's opinions to validate your own relationship? Are you in it? Like that you're in, sorry. And whether it's positive or negative, I think it's some food for thought. Like, not even for this situation, but for what you choose to do as a person. Like, why let the judgment of other people dictate how you should behave and interact, or what future pathways you have to pursue? Had to link it back to Life with Lamb, you know? Second tip is to keep busy. That was a fucking long-winded first tip. Wow. But the second tip is to keep busy. Call it a distraction, or call it avoiding like the true thoughts and feelings coming through for a LDR. But being busy is firstly cliche, but secondly, I think pivotal to an LDR. And it teaches you independence. And luckily for myself and Issika, we run pretty tight schedules that typically finish at the same time. And honestly, I implore you to try and emulate this in your LDR. You'll find that your own life becomes more fulfilling as you time block. And it's such an important thing, time blocking. But you time block certain parts of your day to achieve certain things in hopes to schedule in time with your significant other. It's like, maybe I'll get all my meal prep done in the morning, and then I'll gym in the afternoon, and then I'll do a bit of uni work leading towards the night, and then after dinner, it's like, okay, this time like I have to myself to watch Netflix or call or text, those sorts of things. And I love this method holistically for your own life. I find myself using Apple Calendar and using this in conjunction with to-do lists, and it's seriously boosted my overall productivity. The fact that you can set aside time in your day as a reward, it sort of acts as a motivator for you to get your work done and have that reward. And you feel good about it. You're like, I've fucking done everything that I need to do. Now I can just unwind and relax and really enjoy my night instead of, I have to do everything. Far out. And by keeping busy as well, your mind will naturally fixate on the task at hand, which means when you aren't busy or doing something, all your mind can sort of think of is your significant other. And honestly, this tip is like improved my overall happiness because it's sort of reinvigorated the yearning and the reward that you feel from the honeymoon stages in a relationship. Not that it ever waned in my relationship with Issachar, but it's added this element where like I don't wound up being complacent and I'm constantly looking for ways to be productive to achieve reward at the end of the day. Or it's like I work super hard to maintain the relationship and find the time to spend with her when I can. And a lot of people talk about the chase and how much fun it is in a relationship, which is honestly fair enough. Like it's great. It's like that's what we're primed as human beings to do. It's like that chase, like the thrill of grabbing the attention of a woman or like, caveman, ooga booga sort of thing. But I've seen quotes where it's like, like the game doesn't stop when you've achieved your partner because all these other people that might have been in line are also still playing that game. And if you become complacent, they will reach elsewhere, which is like, I think it's cringe, but I think it's very applicable as well, to be honest, because like you don't want to be complacent in a relationship and you want to keep working and making the relationship exciting because I don't know. It sounds very objectifying, but like when you're in a relationship and you don't continue to do things that excite you and your significant other, like there are so many differing outcomes that might not be in your best interest, to be honest. And that's tip 2, remain busy. Tip 3, over communicating is not a bad thing and don't expect things if they're not being said or voiced. And I think this message is a message to everyone. Not just those who are doing long distance, but in the workplace, amongst friends. Communicating or even over communicating is such an important skill. And it's such a determining factor for your own happiness. And I don't mean this in a nagging way. I mean this in a way that informs someone, I'm not going to say partner, someone about how you feel. Because it's important to set these boundaries in life. It's important to have your own set of morals and boundaries and things that you follow and things that you value so that other people can respect that. These things are like how you might feel, what you're up to today, or when you might be free throughout the week. This is more relationship, but how you feel is such an important thing. So I'll put that one into context. It's a fucking killer, man. Like too many times in my past relationships, I've been like this, macho man and contained like everything within myself and would not voice how I was feeling, what certain actions meant. And sometimes it's like, it's really hard because you don't know how to voice it. But I guess it led to me acting out and doing things that maybe I felt justified, but my partner was the bearer of, the ex-partner, was probably the bearer of whatever stupid shit that I did. And this is because I knew in my own narrative how I was feeling. But my partner did not. So as you can imagine, they might be teetering along, super happy in the relationship, and then all of a sudden, boom, fuck you. And everything hits the ceiling. How, like, it's such like, what do you call it? It's such a just change in scenery, to be honest. Like, just instant, just what the fuck is happening? And how does that make someone feel, So talking about your feelings is so imperative to any relationship. I used an ex-partner relationship sort of as an example, but whether, it is a friendship or it's a friend treating you like shit or not inviting you to things or a nagging parent, communication is so necessary, and I cannot stress this enough. Think of it like in this sense, like we are not telepathic. We're not telepathic at all. Even though you might think you are. Like, how are we meant to know how someone else is feeling? Like, we obviously don't. And not unless we have voiced it, or they have voiced it, or we're told through someone else. Or think of it in a work sense. How are you going to achieve your dream job or promotion if you're not facilitating the conversations that demonstrate that you're interested in furthering yourself within that position? You know, like, shout out Richard. I'm going to use you as an example. Nab, he was in probably bottom tier, and one day he was just like, I'm going to the manager and I'm going to ask for a promotion. And it wasn't the first initial step of the interaction where he got promoted. In fact, he kept doing it. He kept nagging. He kept sort of banging on the door, but in a respectful way. And now he's been promoted. Like, if you don't think that communicating things doesn't solve things, if you don't think communicating things doesn't solve things, that is your own issue. And this is me trying to convince you that communicating is so, so important. Like, for the boss or the manager, like, all they care about, like, for all they know, you are their worker and you are working for them for X wage and X compensation. They don't care about your aspirations. Some do, don't get me wrong. But unless you're like banging on the door or seeking the opportunities, I don't know. They have millions of other things to do. You are just another fly on the wall, but you have to make yourself be that annoying ass fly that's flying around you. Wow, awesome analogy, Jaden. So same goes to relationships, especially like when you are physically distant from each other and your partner isn't able to read your body language. Like, you're not like in the corner sort of thing, or like, rolled over on the other side of the bed. Like, you can't tell, you know? So being able to interpret tone via text message is just so difficult. Like, oh gosh, it's a completely different ball game in that sense. So if you're not able to communicate effectively and be semi-vulnerable about your feelings, anything and everything goes to shit. And I would hate for your relationships or friendships to go to waste because you couldn't speak up about how you feel. Like, guys, it's 2023. Talking about your emotions is cool. You know, like, just tell people how you feel. It's hard. I'm not going to say it's not hard at all, but also there are like pointers out there. Like, if you can't articulate how you feel in the moment, just ask for some space. Hey, like, I just needed a moment to think about this, and then find the words to voice how you feel. It's a skill. It's like any skill. You have to practice it and you have to be able to understand how you feel, because I think it's just so important, and you will not get anywhere unless you know how you feel and are able to articulate it. Refer to the above. Tip 4 is utilize different ways to show affection and think outside the box, pretty much. And it's like, this is more a technological route, and how technology can play a part in furthering your long distance relationship. So obviously you lose your physical touch instantaneously, unless you're visiting quite frequently and you have sort of the cash and money to do so. Luckily for me, Isika is in Sydney, so it's quite a cheap flight round up and back. So LDRs void you of ways that you might have shown affection in the past. So it's time for you to go back to square one and rethink how you want to approach this, to be honest. Refers to point 2. Like, it's so interesting because it's back to square one. You have to sort of reestablish yourself and find different ways to excite your partner, spoil them, treat them really nicely, or solve dilemmas, those sorts of things. But don't fear. It's not the end of the world. And it sort of, again, ties into that second point. You now have to think of different ways that you can show appreciation for your partner. And with the help of technology, God, there is so much out there that you can do. My God. And I find it so exciting with the technological developments that allow us to firstly communicate via channels like FaceTime and Zoom. Like, so convenient. but also be able to like update each other throughout the day, like via photos, like if we don't have time to talk. And I'll get into that in a bit. So here are some of the best apps that you can use in a long distance relationship, or even if your friend has moved somewhere far away. I'm not sponsored. I'll have a link to them in the show notes below if you want to try these out, because I think they're cool in a friendship anyway. So first one, Widgets. Widgets is an application, and well, obviously it is amazing, I think. And in iOS, you're able to pop them on your like lock screen and everything. So Issachar and I have how far apart we are. I don't know how effective or viable that is, to be honest, but we can see when we're together, so that's awesome. But you can also have like countdowns to days that you get to see each other, or like days that you have a certain date on, which is so amazing. And you can sort of see into the future and have something to look forward to, which is such a huge point as well. It's like being able to set those timelines and have something to be excited for and get around. NoteIt. NoteIt is such a great app for you if you're a bit of an artsy individual. I'm most definitely not. And I'm such a bad drawer, which makes it really funny because you can actually see the replay of what you're drawing, which is so funny. Oh my God. Anyway, you're able to draw each other's pictures, and you can have like a widget icon on your phone, and you can just see like what people are drawing, like, oh, Chicky, I miss you, those sorts of things. Very cute, very wholesome. Locket is an amazing app and totally shits on Snapchat in my opinion. Like, Snapchat has become this phenomenon where the only real purpose of it is to send selfies back and forth. Like, so boring and such a waste of time, to be honest. Locket, like, I have Snapchat still, and I have like 2 people on there that I talk to, and I probably reply within like 3 business days. I'm not gonna lie. But Locket allows you to take photos, and it pops up on the widget icon that you can put on your like lock screen. No, not your lock screen, your home screen. So you can send selfies, and they're just like, they're there. It's like having a little necklace that like flips out with the frame, but it's like updated. I don't know. It's very cool. It's very cute. And it allows you to sort of update each other throughout the day about like what you're doing. Even if, no, sorry. It allows you to update each other on what you're doing throughout the day without the need to text and those sorts of things, which is so cool. Such a great app. And FaceTime, absolute staple, this one, and is probably self-explanatory. Like, whether it's a dinner date or a brief conversation after work or when they're commuting, it's obviously so nice to see and hear your partner in real time. Use Facebook for anything and take that in any way that you want. And all these apps are actually free to use, but if you have a bit of cash to spare, there's always the option for next day delivery. If you do have money, there are so many services out there that allow same day delivery or even next day delivery. Things like flowers are so easy to purchase and to send to your partner. Like, they become customizable as well, because you can write a little message and everything. So if you're celebrating like an anniversary but not necessarily with them, you can just send them flowers. Yeah, it's awesome. And technology is just so cool. And tip 4 has just been like some of the ways that highlight how lucky we are as a generation to have access to these sorts of things. I remember talking to Dad about how he used to do a long distance relationship and how long it would take for him to mail and receive the mail and then write another mail and then send it out again. And his phone bills were so expensive as well. It's like, to be able to call overseas is just crazy. Like, you can just FaceTime and use your internet. Like, how privileged are we to have access to this technology? And it's so easy to use. Utilize it to your advantage and bolster your relationship with it, because it really just drives a lot of success in these sorts of situations, because we are still connected. Yes, not physically, but we can still see and be informed as to like what someone's doing. And you don't have the stress or anxiety, if you have trust in a relationship, of course, of what your partner's up to, because you can just give them a call, give them a buzz, send them a widget, send them a drawing that you might have sat down on the toilet and written, or drawn, sorry. It's just amazing. Final tip is enjoy it. You two obviously love one another and have committed to this phenomenon. At the end of the day, it's better to try your hardest, I think, and for it to not work out, than think of the possibilities and cut it there, and then think of, oh, like, what if we stayed, and what if we listened to Jaden's advice as this episode is released, you know? Yeah, that's probably it from me. If you found this helpful or know someone that would find this helpful, please send it to them and share this around. Like, it would mean the absolute world to me. I think I really want to just put value out there, and this is sort of my means of doing it. And I hope you enjoyed the episode. It's been really, I'm not done, by the way. It's been honestly an eye-opening experience, because I guess we've had an insight. So Issika and I have had an insight into how we function and how complementary our lifestyles are. Obviously, you need to have those conversations before you commit to a long distance relationship as to whether it's viable, because Issika and I both knew how busy we were as people. So it was actually originally going to be more of a struggle on my end, because it was like, what am I going to be doing to fill time? And now I've found the podcast, and I'm doing like extra curricular activities to not compensate for her absence. It actually furthers me as a person, because I'm out here juggling all these things and doing it. And then I use time with Issika as a reward. It's something that I look forward to. And honestly, that probably rounds it out. If you want more episodes like this, like, please let me know. Like, if you have more questions. But speaking of questions, actually, no, never mind. It's my one takeaway, I guess, to summarize everything, which is very complicated for a long distance relationship, is not overthink it. Like, don't overthink it. Too often we are dictated by what other people perceive to be our best interest, but it's like, that's them. How would they know what we're interested in or motivated to do or wanting to do? Like, they don't know us. They don't know you. And yes, it isn't their fault that they're projecting, and it's annoying, I know, but it's also our job to take ownership and determine what situation best suits us in the future. So more of a career pathway for that one. Sorry to bring it back to that, but I think it's just like, we shouldn't let other people's opinions deter what we want to actually pursue. And with that, I want to say that know that you'll make the right decision, and don't let other people determine otherwise. Now into questions. Thank you those who've sent some questions. We've only got a couple, which is good, actually. I think this will be a perfect chunks episode. It'll be nice and short, filled with information. We love to see it. So Regine asked what the hardest part of being in a long distance relationship is. I would just say the physical touch. I've actually really enjoyed the phenomenon of being in an LDR, because I've been able to juggle my time so much better and be productive, and also be my own independent human being as well, but having the company and the love that is present in Issika and my relationship, because we both love each other so much. And yeah, it's just super exciting, to be honest. I think like just the hardest part is obviously, the physical and touch, and also the accessibility towards one another. Like, I was able to just drive over to the city and hang out with her, but now it's like I have to forward plan and organize times to go see her. Like, when are we free? Oh, are you going to come to Melbourne, or am I going to go to Sydney? Those sorts of things. Regine also asked how long distance relationship affected your love languages. Very good question. Far out. I'd say I'm a combination of all the love languages. I don't know if you can actually say that. Like, I know there's certain types that people gravitate towards. I was definitely like a physical touch person, but now I'm sort of gravitating towards like words of affirmation, because sometimes these career conversations do wane on me, and sometimes you need that sort of pick me up from a partner, or it's like quality time. Like, I'm blocking out time to spend with Issika, and it's like we're trying to like either meal prep together over the phone, or use Netflix party, those sorts of things, like to get around. What are the other ones? Gift giving. Yeah, it's awesome. Like sending out flowers. Acts of service is a hard one. I remember just like going like the past 6 days I was cooking her breakfast, because I feel like I get acts of service from like my Asian background, from grandma and also my dad. Also mum, like everyone. I'm full Asian. Amazing. So Richard asked, do you feel the need to talk every day? No, honestly, I actually don't. And I feel like you go into the expectation that you will talk every day and you will call every day. I don't think you need to. I think it's more about where are you setting aside time where are you setting aside time? And it doesn't have to be every day. Like it might be every second day, or you might have like a day that you sort of come together and that's like your time for the week sort of thing. Because Issika and I are so fucking busy, I'm not gonna lie. And I know there's all these studies and conversations about how people that say that they're busy are like the laziest people. Fair enough on you. But I feel like, yeah, a lot of shit is happening in both of our lives. So no, we don't feel the need to talk every day. It might just be the bookend of each day, like a good morning, good night. But other than that, it's not like it's not, I shouldn't say priority, but it's more that are there any monumental moments that we need to update each other on? And it's not like, how are you doing? What are you doing? What are you up to? What's the weather like? Those sorts of things. Like it's actually broadened our conversation and like what discussion we're able to have, because we're both so wary of the time or the limited time that we have to communicate. So I think in that way, long distance relationships are actually really beneficial, because think of like, if you're spending day after day after day after day after day with your partner, and don't get me wrong, love it, so good, but what sort of conversations are you going to be having at the end of it? Like, are you going to dry out your whole relationship by the end of it? Just some food for thought. Andreas asked, what was the lowest points of doubt you had, and how were they overcome? I think I've sort of covered this one as I've gone throughout the podcast. It was more the physical touch and those sorts of things, but it's like keeping busy is probably the best, and surrounding yourself with a great network of friends has been really good as well. My friends have been amazing in terms of like being able to hang out and socialize with them. Not that I didn't with Issika in the picture, but there's always the preference that you want to hang out with your partner as much as you can when you can. But lowest point was, probably just the conversations leading up to it, and like the dread of doing a long distance relationship, which actually didn't come into fruition until like probably the week that Issika was going to leave, and we were in Sydney and we had to say goodbye at the airport, and I was like so upset. That was probably the lowest point. But then after the goodbye, I think like we just fell back into rhythm, which was so lovely. Caitlin just said, would have loved something like this when I was in an LDR. It'll help so many people. Thank you, Caitlin. Really appreciate that. And to finish off, Aaron has asked, do you do online boom boom lol? And with that, we're going to end the episode there. Thank you very much for tuning in. I really appreciate every single one of you. And if you did find something useful, like please shoot me a text or a DM. DMs are always open. I love chatting to you, and I love having these conversations with you. And I feel like Chunks is going to take that sort of direction in the future, which is really exciting. Be sure to follow @Life with Lamb Podcast on Instagram, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Yo!